Hey, everybody, it's the Drive School Podcast. I am Pastor Goodman, your host. Joining me today is my good friend, Michelle Bauman, the director of Y for Life. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's so great to be here again. It seems like it's been a while, so thanks.
I love when we get to catch up because we've always both been like really busy. You probably even more than me. What's Y for Life doing these days that
Yeah,
lets us hang out now?
yeah. Well, we just finished with the Y for Life in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and you were there. So thanks so much for coming and representing Higher Things. That was fantastic. 500 students. It was so much fun. And then this weekend, actually, we have our Y for Life Summit, which will happen at Concordia, Chicago, where we'll bring together high school and college students to learn more about life issues. And then next month, we have a YA event in Austin, Texas. At Pastor Wolfmueller's church. So we're very excited about seeing some young adults get reconnected with Lutherans for Life and hopefully join us there. So
That's
lots of
great.
fun.
If you were looking to find out more, where might one where
Yeah.
might one search?
So, yep, please do yforlife.org. So, letter Y, number four, word life.org, or ya4life.org. And we would do YA, word four, FOR, life.org. So, yeah,
Okay,
love for them to visit.
that's awesome. So when we do get to hang out, we've been tackling the book of Genesis. We're running a commentary, but with life issues sort of at the forefront.
Yeah.
It's such a unique sort of lens through which to view this book of the Bible that I've never thought to give this treatment before you. So this has been a lot of fun for me. We're picking up in chapter 14
That's
right now. So life issues in the book of Genesis with Abram in chapter 14. What do we got?
Yeah, so we have war, right? We have the beginning of a war that Abram's actually not really part of, not at least initially. So we have all these kingdoms who are attacking other kingdoms that were under their rule, but here's the thing: they didn't pay their tribute, right? So which means they didn't pay their taxes, and so the kings are coming in basically to get what they believe is theirs. And I think that's always kind of a interesting place to start. Like, why does war start? Sometimes
We
because of
had a war
power.
like that, yeah.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
tea.
exactly. In America, yeah, we have a history of a war that was just basically it was on based on taxes, right? And so we see that our world is definitely broken, and that money would cause us to attack each other, right? Or lack of money, not paying. So I think we should talk about war, because war obviously is not life affirming, right? Um, it it ends people's lives. It is again based on something, usually some greed or power, desire for power. But we also see in this story Lot and his family become a captive, right? They are captured by the opposing side. Not that Lot didn't pay his taxes. He's probably just like a regular Joe, right?
Just
What did
doing
I
a thing.
do? Doing his thing, and then he and his family all get captured and taken away. And we read in God's word that someone who is captured escapes and comes and tells Abram that his nephew has been captured. And so Abram, he does the life affirming thing. He takes his 318 men from his house and joins with some other guys, and they go and they surround the camp at night, and they rescue all these captives. They free them, and they return them safely to their home. Not just the men, but also the women and children, and the things that their possessions. Right. So Abram, even though his vocation was not to become a soldier or a general or a captain, he becomes one of those. Right. He leads a force into battle, um, but he does it in order to save Lot's life. And so I think it's really important as we think about war. There are lots of roles people play, and I don't know about you, but I've had people ask, is being a soldier God pleasing, right? Is that can that even how can that even be life affirming? And I think we have a good picture of it here. You know, Abram is not fighting for goods or for power. And in fact, the king of Sodom wants to give him a bunch of gifts at the end. And Abram says, "Nope, my allegiance is to God. I'm not a mercenary, right? Like I don't want to be paid to just go fight a war, but I'm going to uphold the lives of the people of my family, right? The people I care about." And soldiers, like modern soldiers, are sometimes sent to war uh, by government to uphold life, right? It's kind of like an irony in a broken world that war can actually bring peace, or that war can protect or rescue people that have become captives. But in this example, Abram does uphold life, and we can be certain that those that are who are soldiers, who are employed by our government and are fulfilling that vocation, are doing so to protect our nation or to protect and preserve life in other places.
100%. There's so much going on here, and it's one of those things too that like it bears sort of at least noting that when it comes to war, the closer you get to it, the harder it is to actually talk about. And in a lot of cases, that means the people standing the farthest back have the most to say, and that's sometimes problematic if you happen to be in the middle of it and looking to find hope. There's no way to talk about war as if there is somehow not sin involved. Sin breaks stuff. Look around this thing and recognize that sort of instead of just sort of like what is the right way to be a soldier without being a sinner. Instead, we get to say you are a sinner that Jesus died for. The approach through this thing is never to sort of say you are always doing the right thing, but there's a lot of wrong here. So what can you look to that will work good in the midst of wrong? And then why are you there if there's that much wrong there? And there's sort of different approaches there. And the large catechism, Luther will talk about this a little bit too, and say that there's a big difference between going into a place where lots of wrong is happening and even participating in the wrong yourself in defense of the least of these versus in search of selfish gain. And this is sort of the greatest distinction because the other problem with war is because everybody recognizes just how painful it is, we're so quickly like nobody actually advertises being the bad guys to a war. Like go to any war, like go to World War II and go to Hitler. And like he did not advertise being the bad guy, even
No,
though he was the bad guy
he
there.
was the bad guy.
Everybody's so quick to sort of wrap themselves in a religious justification, and everybody is so quick to wrap themselves in this is somehow for the good of mankind. So how do we actually sort of figure out which side is right, and what do we do if we sort of find ourselves sort of caught up in the middle of it? This is also a very helpful thing because you pointed out like what Abram is looking for here and what he is not willing to entertain helps us make that decision, right?
Right. Yeah. What he wants to do is uphold life. He wants to rescue Lot and his family. He wants to bring them back to safety. He doesn't want to make money. He doesn't want to gain power. He doesn't want to overtake some other land or their taxes. Right. What he wants to do is rescue his family, right? He wants to uphold life. And I think that is a mark, right? When we talk about a just war, right? We can say with faith that Abram fought in a just war because these people were unjustly taken captive, and he rescues them, just as Christ rescues us from the captivity of our sin, right? We are owned by Him, and yet we were taken away from Him, and so He comes in a just war to rescue us.
Love that. It lets us talk about both sides of this. So first and foremost, we can say soldier is a godly vocation. It's not a sin to be a soldier. But for those things that keep you up at night, should you be one, know that Christ came to rescue you. And there, you don't have to sort of try to do any math that doesn't involve Jesus. It always sort of lets that be what's front and forward because Christianity has been used to justify a lot of things. We can sort of go through the Crusades and nitpick and lots of other places as well. And instead of that, it's not just sort of what is right, but also where is Jesus? And that's a very sort of helpful way to talk about this. This understanding that life issues are going to be gospel motivated. We're not just looking for what is right and good, but we're looking for hope. We're looking for Jesus. And here, it's not even funny. It's probably very much on purpose that we have to transition from war to the person of Melchizedek, who's a bit of a character here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, who actually is like the forerunner, a forerunner of Christ, who is
He's a
a
type of Christ.
type
Yeah.
of Christ. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for correcting that. Who who comes and he brings like this feast, this meal of victory, and ironically, it is bread and wine, right? And we see that he gives it to Abram. He rejoices with Abram, and it's very clear that Abram. Okay, so he's a king, Melchizedek, a king, and the name means that he's like king of righteousness, but also king of peace. He was the king in Jerusalem of the time, or at that time, and so there's so many like connections, and we think as Christians, could this is he supposed to be representing Christ here? And
Yeah. This is feeling real Jesus-y.
yeah, it is, right? Like he's doing this victory meal, and then the same type of victory meal that we see on Sunday morning with bread and wine, the
Mhm.
same, we see that Abram actually gives him 10% of all he owns. So Abram, who just won this battle, who rescued lots and lots of lives, recognizes that he owes honor to Melchizedek, right? Um, which of course we believe that of Christ as well, right? Like we
Mhm.
honor him, we want to be blessed by him, we desire that blessing, and certainly Abram did. It's just what a really wonderful reminder that even in this, right, Jesus comes into this situation, and Jesus brings grace, and Jesus brings healing. Now, of course, Melchizedek is not Jesus, and yet he's a type of Christ, right? Like he's supposed to
Right.
point us to to the Jesus who will come to do that forever.
Right, and he's recognized to stand in this place, even to faithful Abram here, because he is both priest and king.
Yeah,
So again, like real Jesus flavored. Yeah, I catch it. But for Abram to sort of just have this guy drop in out of nowhere, because this is not a character that we have had thus far in the narrative, and that's not to say that he's not real. Melchizedek is a real priest and
he is.
king,
Yeah,
but like just all of a sudden, like, oh, by the way, also, I know you thought that you were sort of the only one doing this thing, and I know that you thought this was on you to sort of make the faith as many as the pieces of sand on the beach or stars in the sky. Also, here's the faith right here because God's the one working it. And Abram, he not only pays tribute, but he pays reverence. It's not just like I'm paying taxes here, but he worships here as if this person spoke on behalf of God. There's a lot of hope here. We were talking before we recorded. You pointed out something really cool to me that Luther found. What was that?
yeah. So Luther writes that there's he thinks that Melchizedek was a descendant of Shem, who just a few episodes ago we talked about Shem and as the son of Noah, right? And so what a phenomenal realization for Abram to see. Oh my goodness, there are Christians other places, right? Or there are people who believe in Yahweh in other places. And so if Melchizedek definitely is the descendant of Noah and Shem, we see how that faith is passed on from generation to generation. But we also see we're not alone, right?
Yeah.
It is God's sustaining faith through families, through generations in different places. And I think as we're here in America, it's true. There are lots of Christians in America, even as our society has transitioned into more of a post Christian era. And yet, it is so easy to feel at a public high school or a public college or at a workplace, a place of work, to feel like I'm the only one. Like I'm the only one who believes in these promises and who's living this life that the world says is sort of weird, right? Right? Like I
It
get
is. No, it is objectively weird.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have trouble with it.
Right, right. It's just, that's the world looks at Christians and says, yeah, you're different, you're not like the rest of us, and so sometimes there's shunning, sometimes there's being, it's just, there's loneliness, and God like blesses Abraham in such a wonderful way to show him, not only am I here to serve you, but there are others that are with you, right? They're
Yeah,
standing with you.
the church is bigger than you think, and also the church is not your burden, because God is actually wants there to be a church even more than you do. He wants to share hope even more than you do. And it lets us then meditate too, in the midst of war and all of these things, on what a type is. I've noticed too. So if Melchizedek is a type of Christ, which means like there's some real Jesus-y stuff going on. Like there's a meal with bread and wine that is received as a priest gives it, not as a host gives it. That to hold the office of both priest and king is something that the scriptures attest to as is that's Jesus. Um, to hold then Christ as the fulfillment of all of these types, it lets us look at life issues in a much different lens too. And I think this is probably pivotal, because you have to recognize we live in a world that there's still wars being fought, and I hate that. We live in a world there's still hurt, there's still loss, there's still suffering, sin, and death. So then Christ gets to be the fulfillment, which means when we look to what this looks like, it is not just do the right things and nothing bad will happen to you, but it is rather there is death and resurrection, and that means there is hope for the hopeless. If Jesus is the fulfillment of this, then it is Jesus who bore the cross, who died, and then who rose again, so that all of us who are on this end of the broken side and just struggling because I can't have that perfect life. I want to, but it was taken from me. I was taken captive. I was wrapped up in this. I messed up myself. I've sinned and I've gotten in over my head. In all of these places, the fulfillment of the type is not somehow be good, avoid bad things, but rather Jesus carries you through death and back out the grave again. And that changes life issues in a radical way, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It gives eternal hope. You said that
Mm.
that Melchizedek is both priest and king, and Jesus. We still have both priest and king with us today, right? Our priest and king every Sunday serves us, both his body and blood. We see in his word, and that again, you're right. It does reshape life issues. There is hope for those life issues not only to be resolved this side of heaven, but ultimately the other side of heaven, right? So even if we're dealing with a disability that is lifelong, we are victors because of Christ, right? That disability has not prevented us from the best gifts ever, from the life-affirming gifts that God has to offer. That disability has not separated us from the God-man Christ, the one who came to save us, and in fact, He walks with us in that disability. So again, like we go back to that Melchizedek and Abram, they're not alone. We're not alone either. We have Christ with us, Christ in us, right? And one who will carry us unto salvation, that we might spend eternity with Him.
Yeah, that's Christ for us. Michelle, thank you so much for being here with us today and working through the book of Genesis. Hope to see you again real soon.
Yeah, thanks very much. See you later.